It was supposed to be the happiest day of my sister's life, her wedding day. But for me, it became the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I was standing next to her, watching her walk down the aisle to marry the man of her dreams. But my heart was heavy with a choice I had to make. Do I save my relationship with Jake, the man I love, or do I make my family happy by doing what they expected of me? The decision I made shocked everyone and changed my life forever. It was the day of Olivia's wedding, and everything seemed perfect. The sun was shining, the flowers were in full bloom, and our entire family was gathered together. The air was filled with excitement as the house buzzed with last-minute preparations for the ceremony. My mom was fussing over the details. My dad was trying to keep everything on track, and my younger brother Alex was happily running around, thrilled for the wedding and the attention he was getting. I was standing beside Olivia as she got ready, helping her into her dress. She looked beautiful, radiating happiness, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched her. Olivia had been dreaming of this day for as long as I could remember. It was her moment, and I was so proud to be by her side. But as I helped zip up her gown, there was a knot in my stomach. Something was off. I had always been close with Olivia. We had shared everything growing up, our secrets, our dreams, and our support. Watching her marry the man she loved should have felt like the most natural thing in the world. But underneath the happiness, I was struggling with a storm of my own. Jake, my boyfriend, had been distant recently. We'd been together for years, and I thought I could picture our future together. But over the last few months, things had changed. There was tension between us, small things that we had ignored or tried to push aside. But now, on the biggest day of my sister's life, those issues felt even bigger. My thoughts kept drifting to Jake, his frustration with my family, his unease around them. He wasn't the type to play along with the family expectations, and that was something that had been building between us for a while. I knew how much my family expected me to be there for Olivia, to be happy for her, to support her fully, but I was torn. I didn't want to let anyone down, especially Olivia, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had to give. Either I would continue to let my relationship with Jake unravel, or I would have to make a choice that might disappoint everyone, including myself. As the ceremony started, I stood there beside Olivia, smiling at her as she prepared to walk down the aisle. I kept telling myself that I should just enjoy the moment, that I should be the supportive sister I always promised to be. But deep down, I felt a wave of dread. The decision I would have to make was coming closer, and I didn't know if I was ready. My family was so eager to see me settle down with someone they approved of, but Jake and I weren't fitting into that picture. I wanted to enjoy the happiness of the day, but my mind kept returning to that growing tension inside me. It felt like a battle between my loyalty to my family and my commitment to Jake, and I didn't know which side I was supposed to choose. As Olivia walked down the aisle, the music playing softly in the background, my heart raced. This should have been a perfect moment, but the uncertainty inside me was too much to ignore. What was I supposed to do? What would I choose when the time came? The question gnawed at me, making it harder and harder to focus on anything but the weight of that decision. As the wedding ceremony continued, I could feel the tension building inside me. Olivia was in her element, smiling brightly as she exchanged vows with her soon-to-be husband, Ryan. The room was filled with love and joy, and it should have been a moment of pure happiness for me as well. But all I could think about was Jake. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had been growing between us for the past few months. He was supposed to be there with me, standing by my side, but instead, he had pulled away, emotionally, mentally, and physically. It felt like he was becoming a stranger, and the distance between us was growing wider with each passing day. I had tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the wedding and my sister's big day, but it wasn't that simple. Jake and I had been through so much together, and yet, something felt off. Every time we spoke, it seemed like there was an underlying tension, as if we were both pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I had always been able to talk to Jake, to confide in him, but now it felt like we were speaking different languages. He had stopped coming around for family events, and when he did, he seemed uncomfortable, like he didn't belong. I tried to explain it away, thinking maybe he was just nervous about the wedding, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about something bigger, something that had been eating away at our relationship for far too long. But I also knew that my family, especially my parents, had certain expectations of me. They had always wanted me to settle down with someone who was stable, reliable, and, most importantly, someone who fit into the family's vision of the perfect partner. Jake wasn't that person in their eyes. He wasn't as traditional or as predictable as they had hoped for me. I had always thought my family would eventually come around, that they would see how much I loved Jake and understand why we worked. But the longer I spent with him, the more I realized that I was starting to lose sight of what made me happy in the process. Was it the pressure to make my family happy that was pushing me away from Jake? Or was it simply the growing distance between us? I could feel the pull of my family's expectations weighing heavily on me, especially as I looked around at my parents and the way they looked at me, expectant, hopeful, and, in my father's case, a little too eager. I could see him glancing over at me during the reception, probably wondering when I was going to settle down. He'd been talking about me marrying Jake for years, but now it felt like he was silently questioning why I wasn't further along with our relationship. It was as if the love we had was no longer enough to satisfy the expectations he had set for me. Meanwhile, Jake seemed more distant than ever. He had barely spoken a word during the ceremony, and now, sitting at the table with me during the reception, he was barely making eye contact. I could tell something was bothering him, but every time I tried to ask, he brushed me off. The awkward silences between us were deafening. He looked uncomfortable in the crowd, and his tense body language was hard to ignore. It was as though he didn't want to be there, didn't want to be part of this world that my family had built. I wanted to reach out to him, to ask what was going on, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not with all the eyes on us. The more I watched him, the more I felt the weight of my two worlds crashing together, and I didn't know which one to choose. I looked at Olivia, radiant and full of joy as she danced with Ryan. She looked so happy, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She had always been there for me, and I was supposed to be there for her on her big day. But the more I tried to focus on the happiness around me, the more I was pulled back to Jake and the growing divide between us. The guilt of feeling torn between my sister's wedding and my relationship with Jake began to weigh on me. How could I be so happy for Olivia while feeling so lost in my own life? I knew I couldn't continue pretending everything was fine, not with Jake and not with my family. The pressure to make the right decision, the fear of disappointing both sides, was becoming too much. I wanted to fix everything, to make it all work, but every choice seemed to lead to more complications. The more I thought about it, the more uncertain I became. The question haunted me. Do I save my relationship with Jake, or do I choose my family's happiness? It was the toughest decision I had ever faced, and no matter what I chose, someone would be hurt. And yet, I felt like I was running out of time to make a decision. Something had to give, but what? The night wore on, and I found myself looking at Jake, who was staring off into the distance, lost in his thoughts. I couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I needed to decide soon, but how could I choose between love and family when both were pulling me in different directions? The conflict was unbearable, and I had no idea which way to turn. By the time the reception was in full swing, the weight of my internal conflict was nearly unbearable. The sounds of laughter, music, and Clinking glasses all seemed distant as I sat there, numb, watching my family celebrate my sister's happiest day. Olivia, in her beautiful white gown, was dancing with Ryan, beaming with joy, while everyone around us seemed to be lost in the bliss of the moment. But there I was, stuck in a place between the life I had with Jake and the life my family envisioned for me. It felt like a suffocating tension was building inside me, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore it. I kept replaying the conversation with Jake earlier in the day. He had barely said a word about the wedding itself, and when I asked him what was wrong, he deflected with an empty, "I'm fine." But his behavior, the way he pulled away from me, made it clear that something wasn't right. In that moment, I knew deep down that Jake wasn't happy. He didn't belong in this world I had with my family. He had always been a bit of an outsider in their eyes, but I thought love could bridge that gap. Now, I wasn't so sure. I tried to push the nagging feeling away, reminding myself that it was Olivia's day, that she deserved my full attention. But I kept thinking about the conversation we had on the drive to the wedding venue. Jake had started talking about how he felt out of place around my family, how they never accepted him fully, and how the pressure was getting to him. He said it lightly at first, almost like a joke, but there was hurt in his voice. It wasn't the first time I had heard it, but this time it felt different. He was struggling, and I wasn't sure I could fix it. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The decision I had to make wasn't just about me anymore. It was about whether I was willing to let go of a relationship that once meant everything to me. If I chose Jake, would I be abandoning my family, the people who had always been there for me? Would I be choosing a future with someone who didn't fit into the world I had grown up in? Or would I be making a decision that would haunt me forever? The pressure of the decision began to suffocate me, and with each passing moment, I felt like I was losing myself. Then, as if on cue, my father came over to me, his face glowing with excitement from all the wedding festivities. He leaned in close, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "Lily, you've always been such a responsible one," he said with a smile. "You know, I'm proud of the woman you've become, and I really think it's time you start thinking seriously about your future. You've been with Jake for a while now. Don't you think it's time you make a decision about your life together?" His words hung in the air, more like an expectation than a question. The gentle nudge he gave me was a reminder of the path my family had always imagined for me. They wanted me to settle down, to find someone who fit into their world. They wanted me to take the next step in my life, and to them, that meant doing things by the book, following the traditional route. That was when it hit me. The weight of the choice I had to make was much heavier than I ever imagined. My father's words echoed in my mind, and I realized that the love I had for Jake wasn't enough to overcome the expectations of my family. The dream of a perfect wedding, of a family united, was a powerful pull. It was about the life they wanted for me, the life they had always dreamed I would lead. But Jake wasn't part of that world. He didn't fit into the image my family had for me, and no matter how much I loved him, I knew deep down that I couldn't force him to change just to meet their expectations. I stepped away from the table, excusing myself under the pretense of needing a break from the festivities. I found a quiet corner, the dim lights and soft music from the reception fading into the background. My heart was heavy, and I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. There was no going back from this moment. I knew that the choice I made now would shape my future, and I had to be honest with myself. After a few deep breaths, I reached for my phone. I needed to talk to Jake. I couldn't continue avoiding this conversation, pretending like everything was fine. My heart ached at the thought of losing him, but I knew I couldn't keep dragging him through a life that didn't fit with what he wanted. I dialed his number, hoping that I would find the strength to say the words that had been building inside me for months. When he picked up, his voice sounded tired, distant. I gathered my courage. "Jake, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, but shaking with emotion. "I love you, But I don't think we're on the same page anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. It was filled with pain, confusion, and anger. But in the end, I knew it was the right decision. I had made the choice to step back from a relationship that wasn't working, to choose the life my family expected. Even if it wasn't the life I had hoped for with Jake, I had to let him go. And in doing so, I was choosing my family's happiness over my own. When I returned to the wedding, I found Olivia in the middle of her first dance, surrounded by love and joy. My heart ached, knowing that I had just made the hardest decision of my life. But as I watched her, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that shape our futures in ways we can't yet understand. The wedding reception carried on around me, but I felt like I was in a different world. Every smile, every laugh seemed distant, and the music that was supposed to bring joy only deepened the silence I felt in my heart. I had just let Jake go. The decision was made, and I couldn't take it back. I knew it was the right thing to do, but that didn't make it hurt any less. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me. I had chosen family, and now I was left wondering if I had done the right thing, if I had made the right choice. After the conversation with Jake, I felt a strange sense of emptiness, but also clarity. There was no more running from the decision I had avoided for so long. I tried to convince myself that I could balance both worlds, that I could make everyone happy. But the truth was, I couldn't. I couldn't ignore my family's expectations, or the way they wanted me to fit into the mold they had made for me. And at the same time, I couldn't keep living a life with Jake that wasn't authentic to either of us. We had drifted too far apart, and no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't hold on to a relationship that wasn't working. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, I realized something. My entire life, I had been the peacemaker. I had always tried to make everyone happy, to be the one who held things together. But what about my happiness? What about the life I wanted to live? I had spent so many years trying to live up to my family's expectations that I had forgotten to listen to my own heart. I had chosen to sacrifice my relationship, but at what cost? Was I giving up on love for the sake of family? And if so, would I ever regret it? Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see Olivia standing there, her wedding dress still pristine, her smile wide. But there was something in her eyes that made me pause. She looked at me with concern, and I could tell she knew something was wrong. "Lily, are you okay?" she asked gently. Her voice was warm, full of understanding, but it cut through me like a knife. I had been so focused on my own turmoil that I hadn't even noticed how my actions were affecting her. This was her special day, and here I was, breaking down inside while she should have been celebrating. I swallowed hard, trying to force a smile, but I couldn't hide the sadness in my eyes. "I'm fine," I said, but even I knew it wasn't true. Olivia, ever the perceptive one, didn't buy it. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so no one could hear. "Lily, what's going on? You've been distant all day. Did something happen with Jake?" My heart dropped. I had no idea how to explain it to her. The weight of the decision I had made felt heavier now that she was standing in front of me. Olivia, my little sister, the one who had always looked up to me, and the one who I had just let down. I knew she had her own dreams for me, dreams that involved a happy future with Jake, a future she had always imagined. But I had just shattered that dream. I ended things with Jake, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't even bring myself to say it out loud without feeling the sting of loss. Olivia's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I thought she might say something harsh, something that would make me regret everything. But instead, she just nodded, her expression softening. "I figured something like this might happen," she said. "You've been so distant with him lately. But Lily, are you sure? Are you really okay with this?" Her words hit me harder than anything else. I had made this decision thinking it was the right one, but now I was second-guessing everything. Was I sure? Was I really ready to give up on Jake, on love, for the sake of my family's happiness? The questions swirled in my head like a storm, but Olivia's voice broke through. "You don't have to explain it to me right now," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I just want you to be happy, whatever that means. You're my sister, and I love you, but you need to follow your heart, not just make decisions for everyone else." Her words, so simple yet so profound, hit me harder than I ever expected. I had spent so long trying to please everyone, my parents, my family, Jake, that I had lost sight of what made me happy. I had to stop living for others and start living for myself. I didn't know if the choice I made was the right one, but I had to trust that it was the one I needed to make. And no matter what happened, I couldn't regret it. In that moment, standing there with Olivia in her wedding dress, I realized something important. Life isn't about pleasing everyone else. It's about making choices that feel true to who you are. I had chosen my family, but I had also chosen my own peace, my own path forward. And while it wasn't easy, I knew it was the beginning of something new. As Olivia hugged me, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. She pulled back, looking at me with understanding in her eyes. "You're going to be okay, Lily. We'll all be okay." I wasn't sure if everything would be okay, but I knew one thing for sure. I had made a choice, and I had to live with it. And in the end, that was enough. The weeks after Olivia's wedding were a blur. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the decision I had made, trying to make sense of everything. I had never imagined that my sister's wedding would force me to choose between my family and my relationship. I thought I had it all figured out, that I could keep everyone happy. But that day changed everything. The choice I made to end things with Jake, the man I had once envisioned a future with, wasn't easy. It wasn't something I could just brush off, and neither was the aftermath. I still found myself questioning whether I had done the right thing, especially when I saw my family's approval and sense of relief. But inside, I was still unraveling. I couldn't deny that the tension between me and Jake had been building for months, and I had chosen to ignore it for as long as possible. But as the days went by, I realized that while I had made the decision to prioritize my family's wishes, I also had to take responsibility for my own feelings. I had been trying to live up to expectations, doing what I thought others wanted from me, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten what I wanted for myself. I had made the choice for my family, for the image of what they wanted me to be. I knew that my parents had always wanted me to settle down with someone they approved of, someone who would fit into their vision of the perfect partner. I wanted to make them proud, but I realized that I was sacrificing pieces of myself along the way. I had given up on a future with Jake, but I was still grappling with the loss of the relationship we had once shared. What was I supposed to do with those feelings now? Was I supposed to just forget about them and move on? It wasn't until I talked to Olivia again that I began to truly understand the gravity of my decision. She had always been the more carefree one, the one who followed her heart without hesitation. I envied that about her. In one of our conversations, I admitted how much I missed Jake, how much it hurt to let him go. Olivia listened quietly, not offering advice or judgment, but just her presence. She looked at me with kindness and said, "Lily, you did what you thought was right at the time. You had to make the best decision for yourself, even if it didn't feel like the easiest one. But don't forget, sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that shape us the most." Her words stuck with me. I had been so focused on doing what everyone else expected that I hadn't taken the time to really think about what I needed. It wasn't just about making my family happy. It was about understanding who I was outside of the roles I had been assigned: daughter, sister, girlfriend, and taking ownership of my own happiness. I had to learn to trust myself again. The following weeks were filled with moments of self-reflection. I reached out to Jake, not to reconcile, but to close the door with clarity. He had his own pain to process, just like I did, and I knew that our paths had diverged. But I also knew that I needed to heal on my own before moving forward. I wasn't ready to rush into a new relationship, not until I understood who I was without trying to live up to anyone else's idea of who I should be. I had learned that the toughest decisions often come with the hardest lessons. I learned that love, while important, isn't just about keeping people in your life for the sake of it. It's about understanding when to let go and when to hold on. I had to let go of the relationship with Jake because in that moment, it was no longer serving either of us. And I had to hold on to the love and support of my family, not because it was easy, but because I knew that's where my foundation was. At the same time, I realized that my family didn't expect me to sacrifice my happiness for theirs. They just wanted me to be happy, truly happy. They had always pushed me toward a certain path, but deep down, I understood now that they wanted me to walk that path with my own heart guiding the way. I also understood the value of honesty. I had been honest with Jake, with my family, and most importantly, with myself. And though it was hard, it was the right thing to do. Life wasn't always going to be about pleasing others or avoiding conflict. Sometimes it was about standing firm in your choices, even if they left you with a heavy heart. As I moved forward, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. I knew that whatever the future held, I had taken control of my life. I wasn't living for anyone else anymore, and I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was finally ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to make the right decisions for myself, no matter how hard they might be. In the end, I learned that life doesn't always unfold the way you plan it. Sometimes it takes unexpected turns, and you have to trust that the decisions you make will lead you to the person you are meant to become.